hundreds of miles above Earth, 3 Chinese astronauts are trapped. Their spacecraft is disabled, and their situation grows more desperate by the minute. On the ground, social media explodes, and one name echoes across the posts: Elon Musk. With SpaceX's fleet of reusable rockets and proven Dragon capsules, a rescue seems obvious. Isn't there an unwritten law in space that you help anyone in distress, no matter the flag on their shoulder? But could a SpaceX Dragon actually dock with the Chinese Tiangong space station and bring those taikonauts home? The answer isn't just a simple yes or no. It's a hard no. And the reasons expose a deep political and technical chasm that reaches all the way to orbit. This isn't a story about the failure of technology, but about the stubborn realities of geopolitics. The real barriers aren't in space, they're in the halls of Congress and in the very blueprints of the spacecraft themselves. So, if Tiangong faced a catastrophic failure and its crew was stranded, why couldn't the world's most advanced private space company be the hero? The answer involves a little-known but powerful U.S. law, a fundamental hardware incompatibility, and a fascinating look into China's own surprisingly tough emergency plans. This is the cold reality of why, in space, helping your neighbor isn't always so simple. To understand the biggest obstacle to a SpaceX rescue, you don't start with rocket science. You start with a single, powerful piece of American legislation, the Wolf Amendment. It's not a grand treaty, but a few terse paragraphs quietly inserted into NASA's funding bills every year since 2011. Named for Congressman Frank Wolf, this amendment draws a legal line in the sky between the United States and China. The law explicitly prohibits NASA, the White House, and the National Space Council from using government funds for any direct bilateral cooperation with the Chinese government or any Chinese-owned companies. No joint projects, no sharing technical data, and no hosting Chinese officials at NASA facilities without very specific authorization. This policy was born from deep national security concerns, fears of espionage, the transfer of sensitive technology to China's military, and the country's human rights record. In the eyes of Congress, China's civilian space program is inextricably linked to its military ambitions, so the Wolf Amendment was built as a legal firewall. You might think that since SpaceX is a private company, this law wouldn't apply. But the relationship between SpaceX and NASA is deeply intertwined. The Crew Dragon, the very vehicle needed for a rescue, was developed with NASA funding through the Commercial Crew Program. Its missions to the International Space Station are government contracts. Any rescue of Chinese astronauts would require NASA's operational oversight and technical support. It would mean using government-funded assets and expertise, which would almost certainly be defined as bilateral coordination, putting it in direct violation of the Wolf Amendment. There is an exception, but it's a political and bureaucratic nightmare. The FBI would have to certify to Congress that the mission poses zero risk of technology transfer and involves no Chinese officials with known human rights violations on their record. In a life-or-death emergency where every hour counts, navigating that minefield would take far too long. This isn't just theory. The Wolf Amendment is the main reason China was never a partner in the International Space Station and why its scientists have been blocked from certain NASA conferences. It has effectively created two separate tracks for human spaceflight, one for the US and its partners, and another for China, which is now building its own network. This legal wall is the first and highest hurdle. Before a rocket could even get to the pad, the mission would be grounded by a law written in Washington, D.C. Even if the Wolf Amendment vanished overnight, a SpaceX Dragon still couldn't just fly up to the Tiangong station and dock. The two spacecraft are fundamentally, mechanically incompatible. Think of it like trying to plug a European appliance into an American outlet. The power is there, but the prongs don't fit. In space, this problem is all about the docking ports, the complex mechanisms that let two vehicles connect and form a pressurized seal. SpaceX's Crew Dragon uses the International Docking System Standard, IDSS, an open-source design promoted by NASA and its partners. It's meant to be a universal USB port for space so that different vehicles can connect in an emergency. China, however, doesn't use the IDSS. Its Shenzhou spacecraft and Tiangong station use a system based on the Russian APAS design. While similar in principle, it's a variant of an older technology. The American-led IDSS and the Chinese system are like a lock and key from two different companies. They just don't fit. Couldn't an adapter be built? In theory, yes. In 1975, for the historic Apollo-Soyuz mission, NASA engineers built a special docking module that allowed the American and Soviet spacecraft to connect. But that was a multi-year project, requiring deep collaboration and the sharing of sensitive blueprints, an exchange of information that is explicitly forbidden by the Wolf Amendment. The political barrier reinforces the technical one. Even if an adapter existed, the logistics would be staggering. A rescue isn't just about docking, it's about life support. A Dragon capsule is designed for a specific crew size and mission duration. Mating it with a foreign station would require ensuring the atmospheric pressures and life support systems were compatible. What about a spacewalk? If docking is impossible, couldn't the astronauts just float from their station to the Dragon? This is a last resort you see in movies. But here, it would be exceptionally dangerous and likely impossible. First, the Crew Dragon has no external airlock. It's not designed for someone to enter via a spacewalk. Opening the main hatch in a vacuum would depressurize the entire capsule, risking damage to its electronics and endangering the rescue crew. Second, a spacewalk transfer is a massive undertaking. It would require the astronauts to spend hours in suits, pre-breathing to avoid decompression sickness, while performing a physically demanding and risky maneuver hundreds of miles above Earth. It's an act of pure desperation, not a standard procedure. The technical reality is just as firm as the political one. The lack of a common docking standard creates a physical gulf between the two space programs. Without years of prior collaboration, a Dragon and a Shenzhou are like two ships passing in the night, able to see each other, but unable to connect. So if SpaceX can't help, Are Chinese astronauts doomed in an emergency? The answer is no, and this reveals a critical truth about China's space program. It was designed for self-sufficiency. This isn't a theoretical plan. It's a system that has already been tested under pressure. In late 2025, a real space drama unfolded. A small crack was found on the window of the Shenzhou 20 return capsule docked to Tiangong, likely caused by a space debris impact. The capsule was deemed unsafe for re-entry. The solution was remarkable. The Shenzhou 20 crew, who had just set a Chinese space endurance record of 204 days, returned home safely in the newly arrived Shenzhou 21 spacecraft. But this created a new problem. The Shenzhou 21 crew was now stranded on the station without a lifeboat for an emergency escape. This is where China's foresight kicked in. The China Manned Space Agency, CMSA, maintains a launch one, stand-by one policy. For every crew in orbit, a fully integrated, launch-ready rocket and Shenzhou spacecraft are on standby. In the wake of the Shenzhou 20 incident, China activated this emergency protocol. In a stunning display of rapid response, the uncrewed Shenzhou 22 spacecraft launched just 11 days after the Shenzhou 20 crew returned to Earth. This unmanned lifeboat flew to Tiangong, docked autonomously, and restored a safe return option for the stranded crew, carrying fresh supplies and repair equipment as well. This event proved that China isn't relying on anyone else for help. Its entire human spaceflight architecture is built on redundancy. The Shenzhou spacecraft always serves as a lifeboat, and with a backup ready on the ground, China can respond to a vehicle emergency far faster than any international rescue could be coordinated, even without the political and technical barriers. A response time of just a couple of weeks is a powerful statement of operational maturity, especially when developing a custom docking adapter would take years. The social media narrative of SpaceX riding to the rescue misses the entire point of China's program. Excluded from the International Space Station, China was forced to build a completely independent human spaceflight capability. That independence extends to every part of its operations, especially astronaut safety. In a Tiangong emergency, the call for help wouldn't go to California. It would go to the launch pads in the Gobi Desert, where a rescue mission is always waiting. The web of politics and technology preventing a SpaceX rescue raises a bigger question about our future in space. While national pride and security have built walls, the unforgiving void demands cooperation. We've seen it work with Apollo-Soyuz and the ISS. What do you think? Is it time to scrap laws like the Wolf Amendment and push for universal standards for the sake of astronaut safety? Or are the national security risks still too high? Share your thoughts in the comments. To keep exploring the intersection of technology, politics, and the final frontier, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into not just what's happening in space, but why. So if you see a headline about Chinese astronauts in trouble and wonder why Elon Musk can't just launch a rescue, now you know. The problem isn't a lack of will or rockets. It's about two unyielding barriers. First, the political wall, the Wolf Amendment. This U.S. law, born from national security fears, forbids the kind of deep collaboration a rescue would demand between NASA, its partners like SpaceX, and China. It's a line drawn on Earth that extends all the way to orbit. Second, the technical gulf, incompatible docking hardware. SpaceX's Dragon and China's Tiangong use different systems, making a physical connection impossible without a custom adapter, one that can't be built because of that political wall. But the most crucial point is that China isn't waiting for a hero. Forged by its exclusion from international partnerships, its space program has achieved a remarkable level of self-sufficiency. With a Launch One, Stand By One protocol tested in a real crisis, China has proven it can save its own. The launch of the Shenzhou 22 lifeboat was a clear demonstration that their best contingency plan is the one they control. The dream of a global space community where any astronaut can be saved by any capable vehicle remains just a dream. The Apollo-Soyuz mission in 1975 proved even fierce rivals could shake hands in space. Yet today, despite incredible technology, we live in an era of divided space exploration. This forces a question. Should the final frontier be an arena for earthly competition, or a domain where humanity works together as more nations and companies reach for the stars? The need for universal safety standards and open communication will only become more critical. The day will come when a life depends on it, and on that day, we'll have to decide if the walls we've built on Earth are worth keeping in the heavens.